So
okay.
Please keep your mic muted during the presentation and turn off your web camera if you want. If you have any question or comment, please enter in the chat during the presentation, and your question will be addressed by the presenter at the end. My name is Qingqing Lin. I'm the president of New York State TESOL. I want to warmly welcome everyone. Here you are joining us for a nice TESOL webinar series titled Diversity, Criticality, and Multimodality. So nice TESOL hosts webinar and the professional development workshop throughout the year. Our annual conference will take place on November 3rd to 5. So please visit our website at www.nicetesol.org for information about the upcoming events and other professional development opportunities. Please also notice that CTLE and certificates of attendance are available as a nice TESOL member benefit. So nice TESOL is pleased to present this webinar titled Reflections in a Mirror, Bibliotherapy in the Classroom with Phelps. Phelps, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes. Thank you for checking. Yes, Darius Phelps, yes.
So we are pleased to welcome all of you to this webinar. So it is my pleasure to introduce Darius today. Darius Phelps has been teaching for over 10 years with his students ranging from birth through pre-K and more recently in the elementary level. Currently, he is pursuing his PhD in English education at the Teachers College, Columbia University. Darius have given a TED Talk titled Fingerprints Upon My Heart, Lessons on Life, Love, and Play that chronicle his teaching philosophy, how meeting one student in particular changing his life for the better. Darius' dream, ultimate dream is to become a children's book writer and illustrator and focus on the subjects such as anxiety, depression, and grief. So Darius, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you all for coming out. I'm gonna go ahead and start the presentation and share my screen. All right, if you guys don't mind, can you just use the thumbs up reaction button if you can see my presentation? All right, thank you so much. All right, and welcome to my presentation, Reflections in the Mirror, Bibliotherapy in the Classroom. So we've already had a brief reflection about myself. Thank you so much for that wonderful intro. We will start with some opening questions. If you guys don't mind just utilizing the chat button, chat feature for this. Some opening questions, we'll have 3. The first one, what is your definition of love? How could you or would you define culture? And what comes to mind when you hear the word equality? You don't have to type in the chat right away. It's something to think about as we dive deeper into the topics. So we have a short video on the definitions of race, ethnicity, and nationality via the explanation of jelly beans. I use this in my classroom all the time to really set the tone when diving into controversial topics or what could be controversial topics. I'm just opening up the floor, laying a strong foundation for my kids when it comes to tackling race, ethnicity, and nationality. Can everyone hear the sound? All right, thank you.
Race, ethnicity, and nationality are 3 terms that get thrown around a lot, and all too often they're used interchangeably, ignored, or just used incorrectly. But each of these words actually has a very distinct meaning, and I'm going to talk about them today using my favorite candy, jelly beans. Let's start with race. Now, you may have heard someone say, race is a human construct, and that's true. Race is a mode of categorization that's based on physical appearance. So in the case of jelly beans, race is color. Because race is based on appearance, to some degree it's ascribed, meaning that people are assigned into racial categories based on what other people see. Even if somebody could be mistaken for a certain racial category, it can still apply to them. These categories are fluid, and our ideas of racial groupings change all the time. It's also important to remember that a person can have parents with two different racial backgrounds. The population of the world is becoming increasingly mixed. But even a person with multiple races will still ultimately belong to a racial category themselves, whether or not it's the same as their parents. Race is a huge factor in daily life, but it isn't the whole picture. The term race does not capture the complexities of ethnicity. Ethnicity refers to the ethnic group or groups that a person belongs to. It's a part of a person's heritage and ancestry. In the case of jelly beans, ethnicity is like the flavor. Two people who are in the same racial group can still have very different ethnicities. For example, all of these are red, but this one is cinnamon and this one is cherry. Two people in the same racial group can and often do have very different backgrounds. It's important to note that there are some groups who are unable to trace their specific ethnic heritage because of things like slavery, assimilation, and genocide. Ethnicity is a huge part of identity formation and development, but it's still not the same as nationality. The word nationality refers to someone's national origin, the country where they hold citizenship. For jelly beans, it's like the bag that a bean comes from. People of the same race or ethnicity can come from all different nations, like the watermelon bean that's in Camo Mix and Kids Mix, or the lemon lime bean that's in all three. And nationality is flexible. If a person immigrates, their nationality can change. People can have dual citizenship or sometimes no citizenship at all. So, now you know. As a quick recap, race is a mode of categorization based on physical appearance, like the color of a jelly bean. Ethnicity is a person's actual ethnic background based on their ancestry, like the flavor of a jelly bean. And nationality is the place where a person holds citizenship, which is like the jelly bean's bag. Now that you know the difference, you can have a much more comprehensive conversation about identity issues. Thanks for watching! I hope you enjoyed this video because I totally enjoyed eating these jelly beans afterwards.
All right, and that was the video. I feel like, race, anytime you're talking about race, it becomes heavy, it becomes intricate. And especially with me teaching elementary education, you need an easy way, a way that really connects with the visual for the kids to really, truly understand. And what better way to do that than with food? So with this, you'll see later on the activity I've formed based off of this video, but I really wanted to set the tone and the precedence for my kids to understand the difference between race, nationality, ethnicity, and culture, and how that affects them, and also their interactions and community building when it comes to their students. So, imagination is what, above all, what makes empathy possible. It's what enables us to cross empty spaces between ourselves and those we teachers have called other over the years. If those others are willing to give us clues, we can look in some manner through strangers' eyes and hear through their ears. That is because of all our cognitive capacities, imagination is the one that permits us to give precedence to alternative reality, And that is by Dr. Maxine Greene in her book, Releasing the Imagination. And that is one book that has really fostered not only my PhD journey in English education, but also as I evolve as an educator on this journey to really never become stagnant. I will always focus on how I can be the best teacher for my students of all ages. So for me, you walk into the classroom and you look around, noticing that there isn't a single student that resembles you or even have the same skin color as you. And this is me putting myself in the shoes of my kids, or just really remembering what it was like for me, 20 years ago, being an elementary school kid in 4th or 5th grade. So immediately you start building walls, brick by brick, in order to keep yourself from being an anomaly. And so with this, I wrote a poem titled Brick by Brick. Brick by brick, on my knees I fall each day, praying that God will make a way. The only speck of color in these white spaces, I look around and all I see is their masked faces, waiting to wrap their nooses around my neck and set my soul ablaze. Suffering, eternal damnation. A lifetime of pain, crystal clear, white spaces. Full of evil faces. And that is brick by brick by myself, me. And you'll see right here in the far bottom left-hand corner, I've decided to include an image of poets and educators who have inspired me on this journey. We have Ocean Vuong in the middle, Langston Hughes, Dr. Maxine Green, poet Maya Angelou, and Dr. Chris Edmond, who have really shaped my journey as I become not only a poet, but a culturally relevant educator. Author P.O. Thomas states that as educators, we want children to see their experience in the world as expansive. They should leave the world richer in experience than when they entered it. Our job is to help them engage with new ideas and new people in a way that helps them gain joy and understanding, as well as share that joy and understanding. We cannot do that without empathy, without acknowledging the complex realities of others' experiences. Truth be told, there have been many times throughout my matriculation to both undergraduate and graduate studies where I have felt this way and have felt carried, and I've carried this weight with me that, stems back to the poem I wrote called Brick by Brick, over a decade. No student should have to feel this way or immediately start putting up walls to keep from feeling free and vulnerable in any space or classroom. When a true, inclusive, brave space has been established, all members of the community learn how to honor each other's experiences and opinions with respect in order to reach a place of true understanding where various talents and abilities can shine. As educators, we have to be careful when it comes to teaching units on diversity and culture. Many of us strive to break down barriers and make sure we all stand united. It is important to take both teachers' and students' culture into consideration when making instructional planning decisions, but not to the point where we're basing decisions on generalizations or stereotypes without getting to know individual students. For any educator of any range of experience, liberation should be the ultimate goal for any educator as they evolve with their culturally relevant teaching. No, excuse me, I apologize for that, bear with me. All right, here we go. Thank you. As a society, we put so much pressure on our young children by telling them how to feel, how to think, how to love, even who to be. But what gives us the right to dictate everyone and every little thing? I look at this concept as a painted perception and a mirror. The painted perception represents what society has deemed your culture and how people of that culture act, speak, even go about their daily lives. With a mirror, you only see one way. It's a direct reflection. What children read shapes their perception of that mirror and what they see when looking in. We are the ones providing a narrow view of these worlds by only setting up a mirror instead of a window or even a sliding door. For me personally, books and the use of words taught me how to come to grasp with what I feel on a daily basis, whether that be a spectrum of emotions or even just a feeling of being numb. These are all the emotions I went through my journey of self-identity, along with embracing both the negative and positive of my culture, especially being African-American, especially being a male African-American of color. I want my students to be able to experience a journey similar to my own, but with one with more positivity and exposure to all the themes that I didn't know existed as a child. As educators, we should make it our goal to work towards being more perceptive and appreciating all parts of our students. Because at the end of the day, they're humans just like us, and no one is perfect. We all want to belong somewhere, surrounded by those who love us, love them, and make them feel appreciated. Many times a student's home life isn't the best and could be borderline traumatic for some. For this profession, it is our job to make sure that all of our students, but especially those of color, feel like we all belong here. So This project was based off an essay. It seeks to understand how we could transform our literacy education by adapting a more critical pedagogical approach to foster a true brave space for our students, especially those of diverse cultural backgrounds. One of my favorite quotes of all time is by SEPTIMA POINSETTE Clark, which says literacy means liberation. And this is where I kind of tie in multicultural literature into my instruction as a strong foundation. Multicultural literature has special effects for both students and teachers. Minority students feel recognized and understood when their culture is acknowledged. Students from the mainstream culture learn that there are other perspectives and ways of doing things that are just as valuable as their own. Multicultural literature can also play a very important role for teachers. You know, as educators, we've all experienced the feeling of just wishing that child, whether it's, current classroom throughout the years, that they would just behave, but we may not realize that that actually has a lot to do with their culture, the trauma, and it shows through their body language and their words. But by learning about other cultures, it might open up our eyes to the fact that what we may consider unusual or form of misbehavior could be a sign of respect in other culture we're just not aware of. Students may believe that they are behaving very appropriately, when in fact they may be doing the opposite of what you asked them what you've asked opposite them to do, simply because they did not understand the directions. Our society is becoming increasingly diverse. It's more important now than ever before to learn that we all truly need to create a space that's welcoming with our classroom atmosphere. So by now you're probably wondering, what is bibliotherapy? So bibliotherapy, which often referred to as book therapy, poetry therapy, or even therapeutic storytelling, is a creative arts therapy modality that involves storytelling or the reading of specific texts with the purpose of healing. It uses an individual's relationship to the content of books and poetry, in other words, written as therapy. Bibliotherapy is often combined with writing therapy, as you'll see as we dive further into this presentation. So these are 3 books that I love to use in my classroom, just off of a few that I have. Drawn Together by MINH, Eyes Kiss in the Corner by JOANNA, A Different Pond by Balfi. So when it comes to true multicultural education, I feel that it is one that is constantly growing and evolving as we tackle rising issues that we face in the world. The goal is to teach for equality, and that alone isn't easy because there are so many different biases and an overall lack of diversity. But it's truly necessary in the classroom to make sure that our future leaders of America are ready to face the outside world. Reading literature about people from other cultures has proven to have a positive developmental effect on children of all backgrounds. Reading multicultural literature can help children gain better understanding of people from other countries and ethnic backgrounds, but these stories in particular can describe how people live in different parts of the world, or how they may portray how children from different cultural backgrounds live together in the same country. This can be from fiction, nonfiction, folktales, even fairy tales, legends, or poetry, like mentioned before. But above all, it must be accurate and portray characters in a positive, non-stereotypical way. So this is when I taught 4th grade right before, well, really 2 years ago. 2 years ago, really, exactly today, this is when I taught 4th grade, and we were pretty heavy on picture books as laying that strong foundation. And I believe that picture books and just books in general help teach life skills. So in order to practice what we preach, we have to help our students see the world through different lenses and do all we can to expose them to diverse texts. So I haven't taught middle grades for the last, now 3, almost 4 years. I normally start off with picture books in my classroom so my students can make that visual connection. And now we're going to dive into a few of my favorite read alouds that I use in my classroom that really set the tone and help mold my students and really combine with narrative writing to form that true basis of bibliotherapy. So first we'll have Drawn Together by actually someone who's a good friend of mine, MINH.
Hi there, my name is MINH, and thank you so much for joining me today for Storytime. I am going to read a very personal book to you today, and it's called Drawn Together, illustrated by the amazing Dan Santat, who is a good friend and also one of my favorite author illustrators. In fact, I have one of his books, The Adventures of Beagle, on my office wall. But this book is very personal to me because it is inspired by my relationship with my own grandparents. I'm Vietnamese American, so I was born here in the United States, but my family's originally from Vietnam, and my grandparents spoke mostly Vietnamese, while I spoke mostly English. Whenever I go over to their house, I love them so much, they love me so much, but like I still had trouble talking to them, communicating with them. I'm not sure if you have the same experience with anyone in your family. But so I wanted to write a book that kind of captured both the depth of love and emotion there, but also talked about like the struggles that can come with these relationships. So what I didn't realize is that Dan, who is Thai American, had a similar relationship with his grandmother who spoke, I think, exclusively Thai. And so they had a similar communication gap. So it's a very personal book to both of us. So much so that if you look at the dedication page, you'll see we dedicate to our grandparents. There's my grandfather right there, and there's Dan's grandmother. So, shall we begin? Are you ready? Here we go. Drawn Together by me, illustrated by Dan Santat. And you'll see this lovely gold sticker on the front because we were fortunate enough to receive the Asian Pacific American Librarian Association Award for Best Picture Book of last year. So I'm very honored by that. So our book begins with this boy who's being dropped off by his mom. He goes up and rings the doorbell, and his grandfather answers the door. And you can tell, his grandfather is super excited to see him. He's like, oh, my grandson's here. So they greet each other with this traditional Thai greeting. And the grandfather waves goodbye to his daughter. And then the grandfather lets the boy come inside. And the boy walks in, and he's not so sure. He's looking a little bit iffy about this. But they go inside and sit down to eat. And the grandfather has made himself this beautiful bowl of noodle soup. But because he loves his grandson, he wants him to be happy. He makes him a hot dog and french fries. And because he's a good grandfather, he also adds a little side salad to make sure that he gets his vegetables. But they sit down to eat. And the grandson asks, so what's new, Grandpa? And the grandfather responds with a question in Thai. But unfortunately, they can't understand each other, so that's as far as they can go. And a quick note for those of you who are reading along at home. On this page, you'll see right above the mom's car are the translations for all the Thai text. So the grandfather here is actually saying, how are you doing? So the boy's saying, what's new, Grandpa? The grandfather's saying, how are you doing? They're so close. They're trying to have a conversation, but that's as far as they can get. So they continue eating. So afterwards, they sit down and they watch a movie. And it looks super exciting, right? There's a guy in the corner shouting. He's actually shouting, dragon! But the grandfather's watching his grandson to see how he's doing. And he asks a question in Thai, and the boy asks, can we watch something else? So here the grandfather is actually asking, would you like to watch something else? So again, they're right there. They're so close. But they're not able to communicate any further, so they keep watching the movie in silence. So eventually the boy gets tired. He's like, you know what? I can't follow along. I'm going to go do something else. He goes to his bag, and he pulls out some paper, some colored pencils and pens, and the grandfather walks over and peeks over his shoulder to see what his grandson is doing. And he sees that his grandson is drawing a picture of himself as a wizard. The grandfather gets super excited by this. So the grandfather goes off to the other room, and he comes back with his own sketch pad and some paintbrushes and some ink. And now we hear the boy thinking, and he thinks, right when I gave up on talking, my grandfather surprised me by revealing a world beyond words. And in a flash, we see each other for the first time. And here you'll see the boy as his wizard character. And on the other side, you'll see that the grandfather has painted a picture of himself as one of the heroes from his childhood. You see he has this amazing staff that's also a brush. Now, all the things we could never say come pouring out. You can see the grandson and the grandfather there creating all this, including this funny little monkey. So all the things we could never say come pouring out. And we build a new world that even words can't describe. You'll see down here in the corner, the grandson and the grandfather are standing there surveying this amazing world that they've created together. But just when we're closer than ever, so something's starting to happen. Just when we're closer than ever, that old distance. So the ground splits apart. You see the grandson way on this side with next to the grandfather's brush, and way on the other side is the grandfather standing next to the boy's magic wand. So that old distance comes roaring back, and you'll see this dragon come screaming out of the ground. So the grandfather grabs the boy's wand and he points it at the dragon. And the boy grabs the grandfather's staff and he faces off against the dragon and says, "This time, I'm not afraid. Because I know that together, we can make our way across." And if you look closely, the dragon just didn't disappear. The grandfather and grandson faced off against it and they transformed it into this bridge. So instead of letting it keep them apart, they transformed it into something that will bring them together. So now, after years of searching for the right words, we find ourselves happily speechless. And now we're back in the world of the grandfather's home. You can see the grandfather and grandson are hugging, and on the back walls you can see that entire adventure, that whole world that we were just a part of, was actually taking place in the artwork that the grandfather and grandson were making together. And then it's time to go home. The mom comes back and she is so excited because her father and her son finally found that connection, finally found that common ground. So the mom and grandfather hug, and as they wave goodbye, as they say goodbye, you'll see that the boy is holding one of the grandfather's paintbrushes and the grandfather is holding one of the boy's markers. So now that they've made that connection, that's something that they're going to continue to build upon. So the grandfather waves goodbye with future adventures awaiting down the road. And that is Drawn Together. I hope you enjoyed our book. Like I said, it comes from a very personal place. My grandfather unfortunately passed away before I was able to share this book with him, but I'm confident he knew how I felt about our relationship. That being said, for you all out there listening, if there are people in your life that you haven't talked to in a while, or you're kind of like struggling to figure out how to communicate with, I'm telling you, there's no time like the present to reach out and just let them know how you feel. Tell them that you love them. I hope you enjoyed story time. Hopefully I'll be able to share some more stories with you in the future.
Okay, that was Drawn Together by MINH. I personally love that book because I had a very strong, close relationship with my grandfather. I was raised by my grandparents, with the help of my mom, who was a single mom, but my grandfather was and still is my everything. So when I first read this book, I instantly saw us in this book because of the bond. We had this unspoken connection where we just bonded over little things. So I use this book in the classroom because so many of our kids come from different family dynamics, and this speaks volumes. And so my kids are able to relate to this, whether they are from different cultures and speak different languages, and there's a trouble with dialect, or just simply just having that genuine, strong bond full of true love. So the next one is one that came out last year, right around this time of the Stop Asian Hate movement, written by JOANNA. And this book is, I'm not much of a crier, but the first time I read this book, I was in tears because it's just so beautifully written. The illustrations are so vivid, and the lyrical content is just really, truly speaks volumes. And I made a last-minute addition to this presentation because the companion book for boys, known as Eyes That Speak to the Stars, just came out. So that will be included after this video. This really just, both these books really help students really appreciate how they look and where they come from and their uniqueness, and really owning it and seeing the beauty within themselves.
Hello, I'm Joanna Ho, and I'm so excited to be reading my new picture book, Eyes That Kiss in the Corners, with you today. I hope you enjoy it. Eyes That Kiss in the Corners by Joanna Ho, illustrated by Young Ho. Some people have eyes like sapphire lagoons, with lashes like lace trim on ball gowns sweeping their cheeks as they twirl. Big eyes, long lashes. Not me. I have eyes that kiss in the corners and glow like warm tea. My eyes are just like Mama's. Mama's eyes that kiss in the corners and glow like warm tea crinkle into crescent moons when she comes home from work. She scoops me in her arms, eyes sparkling like starlight, and tickles me until we laugh ourselves onto the floor. When Mama texts me in at night, her eyes tell me I'm a miracle. In those moments when she's all mine, flecks of dancing gold tell me I'm hers too. My mama is my sun and sky, and her eyes are just like Ama's. Ama's eyes that kiss in the corners and glow like warm tea don't work like they used to. But she sees all the way into my heart and can even read my mind. Her eyes are filled with so many stories, I can fall inside them and swim until time stops. I see Guanyin with the monkey king, sitting on a lotus serene, baubles of lychee on trees, and mountains that reach for the sea. My Ama never ages, and her eyes are just like Mei's. Mei's eyes that kiss in the corners and glow like warm tea blink against the window until I come home from school. They disappear beneath her tutu smile when I walk in the door. She toddles after me, gazing up at me like I am her best present. I hope she looks at me like that forever, because when she looks at me in that Mei way, I feel like I can fly. Mei's eyes that kiss in the corners and glow like warm tea are just like mine. My eyes crinkle into crescent moons and sparkle like the stars. Gold flecks dance and twirl while stories whirl in their oolong pools, carrying tales of the past and hope for the future. My eyes find mountains that rise ahead and look up while others shut down. My lashes curve like the swords of warriors, and through them I see kingdoms in the clouds. My eyes that kiss in the corners and glow like warm tea are a revolution. They are Mama and Ama and Mei. They are me, and they are beautiful. See the little butterflies on the back? I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for being here. Hello, I'm Joanna Ho, and I'm so...
All right, and here is the companion book. That one spoke to the females and just so beautifully written. And this one came out February 15th, so 3 weeks ago. And here's actually me reading this today with my kids. Fun fact is that the eyes of kids in the corners is what got me the job I currently have now in Lower Manhattan, at a private school, I read that book to my kids who were then 3rd and 4th graders that are now 4th and 5th graders. So they know this book very well. And here's the companion, Eyes That Speak to the Stars. Guys, so today for our read aloud, how many of you guys remember Eyes That Kiss in the Corner?
I do.
Okay, so we remember this one. All right, so now they have a companion book for the boys called Eyes That Speak to the Stars. So that's what we're going to read today. Eyes That Speak to the Stars. For Agong, who took me on early morning walks up the mountains of Hong Kong. For Dad, who used to carry me on his shoulders. And for Har, Agong, who looks at his grandkids like they're the only answers that matter. To my dad, no matter where I go in life, you're always in my heart. And that's from both the author and the illustrator. The other day, when Baba picked me up from school, I didn't run in for a hug the way I always do. I stared at my toes where it was safe. What's wrong? Baba asked, and all my hurt tumbled out. Kurt drew a picture of our friends, I said. He pointed at a person with eyes, like 2 lines, stretched across his face, and told me, that one is you. But it didn't look like me at all. When we got home, Baba stood with me in front of a mirror and said, your eyes rise to the skies and speak to the stars. The comets and constellations show you their secrets, and your eyes can foresee the future, just like mine. Baba's eyes that rise to the skies and speak to the stars are filled with all the surprises he can't wait to give me throughout the day. When he lifts me above his head and cries, ready for takeoff, before running through the house like we're headed towards the heavens. His eyes shine like runaway lights and tell me, lift your arms, my son. You're going to soar above the clouds. Baba always looks up, and his eyes are just like Akon's. Akon's eyes that rise to the skies and speak to the stars gaze into the distance like they're looking at the world through lenses of time. The voices of our ancestors whisper in his ear, speaking in lifting languages of rice paddies, climbing mountains like stairways to the sky. Mazu's miracles showing mercy from on high, and mango milk from night market, lit with bulbs of light. Akon has an answer for every question I ask on our early morning walks. But when I hug him goodnight, he cups my face in his hands and looks at me like I'm the only answer that matters. Akon holds the wisdom of generations, and his eyes are just like Didi's. Didi's eyes that rise to the skies and speak to the stars are closed so long. I grew an inch waiting for him to wake up. When Didi's eyelids finally flutter open, I orbit his crib, making funny faces and singing silly songs until his laugh grows so big it spreads up his cheeks and makes his eyes squeeze shut again. He looks at me like I'm the world, but he is the sun, filling my days with light. Didi's eyes that rise to the skies and speak to the stars are just like mine. My eyes shine like sunlit rays that break through dark and doubt. They lift their sights on paths of flight that soar above clouds. My eyes gaze into space and glimpse trails of light invite me into impossibilities. The comets and constellations show me their secrets because I am the emperor of my own destiny. I read a brighter future in the stars and will fight to make it reality.
My eyes that rise to the skies and speak to the stars are visionary. They are Baba and Akon and Didi. They are me, and they are powerful. The end. Did you guys like that?
Yeah. Perfect. Very good job.
And that was Eyes That Speak to the Stars by JOANNA.
Good job, Jared.
Thank you.
So I really love using those two books because they teach kids about empowerment and embodying what it means to truly embrace your flaws or what you may deem as your flaws or imperfections and to turn them into something powerful.
Guys,
So we have one more read aloud that's very short. Well, actually, no, we don't. The video is private. I apologize. Well, that was Pink is for Boys. It's a very short picture book that really just amplifies that. You know, a lot of times it comes with the stigma or the stereotype that pink is a girl color. But it teaches boys or anyone of any gender, any pronoun, to embrace who you are, be who you want to be, and that don't limit yourself. So now it's time for an activity. This is one I actually use in my class. I've used for the last 2 years. This is a project that I was very fortunate to create from scratch called In Their Shoes. So this is what I presented to my 5th grade class fall of 2020. I never had a chance to meet these kids. They were amazing. I never had a chance to meet them face to face. We were strictly virtual. And we started off our unit beginning of the year, with narrative writing. And as an avid poet, I just wanted to find a way to really incorporate that, but also really get to know these kids on an intimate level and for me to share that with them as well, because we never really had met face to face. And so here's what the instructions I gave them for their first project. And the project was called In Their Shoes. When it comes to teaching, I'm a huge fan and advocate of using diverse picture books and poetry. So I decided to create a lesson plan and project that would amplify this to my 5th grade class, which was a 5th grade gifted class at that time. So the instructions were as follows. As you know, we've been learning about poetry and personal narratives. Now, it is time for you to complete your own personal narrative poem. I want you to think about how and where you grew up. Think about the challenges you face, whether it be moving, coming from a different county or country, or even dealing with emotions or how you felt. I want you to give your account of these events via the format of poetry, in the vein of a biography poem, and also as a narrative poem. So their instructions were to discuss the following things: your life events, trauma or traumatic events, what it's like to come from other cultures. And the only requirement I had of them was the first and last stanza had to start with the line "in my shoes." And they all had to record a video of them reciting it via Flipgrid, which you'll see in a little bit. But in order to really set that tone, I had to really open myself up and share my own story. So I wanted to give them a good example. And so I wrote this poem titled In Their Shoes. If you only knew what it was like to walk in my shoes, you know my steps march to the beat of different tunes. Music, art, and poetry, all different clues, pieces of the puzzle to my past. The weight of the world heavy like a stack of cement bricks, but nothing and no one would hold me back from overcoming life's tricks and turns. Bruised, broken, but never burned. In my shoes, you wouldn't last a day, surviving hell's fire like a blistering summer in May. No matter the trauma, the heartache, or the pain, I've come out stronger, better, and wiser, with much more to gain. For even flowers bloom after April's rain. If you only knew what it was like to walk in my shoes. And so I just use that as a way to really just be vulnerable, show a little bit about my background without going too in depth, because even I was still, taking it one step at a time. But I wanted to really just open myself up so they can see and get to know me more personally. And they really just had those instructions and then my sample, and just the work that they really produced was, even to this day, I'm still blown away. And so here's the first sample.
Today I'm going to be reading you my In Your Shoes project. Hello, my name is Jensen Owell, and today I'm going to be reading you my In Your Shoes project poem. So, here we go. It would be tough, it would be hard to be in my shoes. I have been through hard times. When I was little, I moved a lot, always getting ready to pack our bags again. When I was around 3 or 4, my parents got divorced. Sometimes it is hard. This past year, I have been through some tough times. Everyone has. Hundreds of thousands of people have died because of COVID-19. It would be tough. It would be hard to be in my shoes.
And that was the first sample. And I apologize for the lag in the videos, but at least you all everyone can hear the audio, right? You can give me just a thumbs up. Let me know that you can hear it okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Cole. Good to see you. So here's the video from the second student. Well, excuse me, audio clip.
I'm going to be reading my In My Shoes poem, and I have a total of 3 stanzas. Okay, so this is it. In my shoes. If you're in my shoes, the events that happened are traumatic. Sometimes I wish I could go back and change what happened. My parents got divorced and could never agree, and if they got married again, things would go back to the way they should be. After I lost my grandma from cancer, every step of the way, I was there for her. I got bullied in New York in my school. That made me feel like a fool, and I didn't think I belonged. At that point, I couldn't take it, so I moved to Georgia. I felt better here and was doing good in my grades. I still miss my family every day I'm here. That's why it's like, and this is what it's like in my shoes. Traumatic events that hurt me too.
And so these first 2 samples, this is actually, I remember this project, it was in October of 2020. So we'd only been in school for really a month and a half. This is probably about mid-October. So for these kids to really just dive deep and excavate this, this trauma, these events, this heartache, but also find a source of healing through, really what truly bibliotherapy is, really just warmed my heart. And everyone didn't really take such a deep and really dark perspective on it. This last one took more of a comedic perspective, which I appreciated because it also showed my students for who they are. They all represented different colors, different nationalities, different backgrounds, but also different thought processes too.
Hello, my name is Sri Ramartha, and today I'm going to show my In Their Shoes project. So let's start. If you only knew how it's like to walk in my shoes, which is strange. In the morning at 8:08, I wake up all cranky in my bed. Soon I stand up and stretch my body. I reach the restroom and start the daily routine. After that, I rush and grab some items, sit at a table, and stare at a computer. I attend a math class, which removes my sleep. I get ready for the day, as keen as a cheetah. Soon I finish all my classes and start to work the work. I start getting tired and the work gets harder, that I stop it completely for the day. And then I play and I eat and I party for the rest of the time. But then I go to bed at 9:30 and start to sleep away. But then at 9:45 I get out of bed. I can't sleep or rest or have a tardy meal. So at 10:30 I finally rest in bed and wait for the next day. By the end of the week I finish every work, but sometimes it creeps into the weekend. But soon I catch it and scribble away like a germ on a hand and party the 2-day break. If you only knew how it's like to walk in my shoes, which is strange. Thank you. Very thank you.
So this project really lasted about a month. We started in October, early October, and that's where I really would take 3 louds. And just a few of them that I used, I decided to highlight, but we used about 20 that were all picture books, dealing with different things such as perfectionism, depression, anxiety, immigration, just to name a few. These kids had to really just dive deep in these works of literature, but they had small writing prompts each day that led to the final project of them doing their own In Their Shoes project and telling their own stories. And this is where this came from. This is what the final project was. All right, so just benefits of diverse literature just in general. Ultimately, the benefits of the exposure to multicultural literature are the following: understanding their identity. Children learn who to associate with, who's different in their eyes, appealing and connecting to the community, being more empathetic and also understanding. And so now we'll take, maybe about 5 minutes just to do a little activity out of our own. And it's your turn to do your own mini in their shoes project. And so these are the same instructions I gave my kids. And so if you don't mind, I will set a brief timer for 5 minutes and give you guys this time to really just sit with this. But also, if you're willing to share your own poem, or if you want to type it in chat, but also I understand if you want to keep it to yourself as well. And so one thing I love to do in my classroom, I've done for the last 4 years, is to play music while we write. And so I'm a huge fan of the lo-fi hip hop radio. And so I will play this. Let me put the instructions back up. And we'll set a timer for about 5 minutes. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to put it in the chat, or just take time just to write. All right, we have about less than 2 minutes left. All right, does anyone need more time? Okay, does anyone want to share out or is willing to share just a little bit of something they wrote or what they thought about? You don't have to share, your entire piece if you don't want to. If you want to, feel free to unmute yourself and share a little bit of something if you feel so inclined to. Okay, does anyone one last check before we move on?
I could share.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Thank you, Cole.
No, of course. So I have 3 stanzas real quick. In my shoes, in my head, there are many places you may rather be instead. Anxiety, depression, ancestral traumas, the daunting tasks of everyday dramas. How will I be perceived in this new space? By my gender, creed, class, or race? More than this makes up my identity, although it may seem rudimentary. I may feel like I've lived a whole life filled with struggle, problems, and strife. When I think about being in my shoes as me, there's nowhere else I'd rather be.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Cole, for sharing that. Thank you. That was beautiful. And I loved how you told your story, but also at the end, how you ended it with a stanza full of hope. And I think that's beautiful, truly. Oh, fun fact, Cole is actually one of my students at Queens College Community. So I hope you can use this activity with your own students. So thank you again for coming out and supporting.
Of course, thank you.
All right. No problem, thank you. Would anyone else want to share? We're almost done. If you are, feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself or type in the chat if you want to. Okay. And so some benefits of diverse literature, which, really is the root of bibliotherapy. You have just a quick video.
What's your name?
Parker Lee.
I'm Charlotte Spencer.
I'm Abby.
Sam.
Savannah.
I want to be a graphic designer when I grow up.
A children's physician.
I want to be a ballerina, fashion designer, an artist, happy.
Hi, I'm Matt De La Pena, and we need diverse books. I feel like I'm a living embodiment of why we need diverse books. Growing up, I wasn't a great student. I was what people call a reluctant reader. I felt like literature was a club that I didn't belong to. Like anybody else who isn't good at one thing, I found other things to get involved with. For me, it was sports. I was pretty good at basketball in particular. And because of basketball, I became the first De La Pena to go to college. Once I was at my university, I was introduced to one specific book that changed everything for me. It's called The Color Purple. And it was the first time I had ever had an emotional reaction to a book.
So for the sake of time, I won't play the whole video, but this book, We Need Diverse Books campaign is a great resource for them to look and use in their own classroom. It really amplifies authors of color, but also a work that really caters to our students of color as well. And this video just gave an account of this authors really saying how literacy really helped them not only find themselves, but really gave them encouragement and inspiration to create a world full of hope for our future leaders of America, as I like to call them. And some takeaways. Through literature and also bibliotherapy that centers around diverse cultures, such as the ones mentioned, teachers can address issues of gender equality, freedom, love, bullying, leadership, courage, and confidence. By utilizing these resources, we can broaden teachers' and students' horizons. With this, they can find comfort, reflection, and solace within the pages of literature. Thank you. So just some brief contact information for me. You can reach me in my personal email, which is dphelps1113@gmail.com. Twitter, my handle is dphelps1113, and my Instagram is mr.dphelps. Thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Darius, for this wonderful talk. So much to take away for me, and I hope for all of you too.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Go ahead.
Yes, as soon as we get the recording from Darius, I will share with all the people who have registered for these sessions. Thank you so much. Good night, everyone.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Have a good one.
Thank you guys for this presentation.
Thank you, Cole. I appreciate it.